All right, now we've got the birth of the baby, 9-8. Yes, I am warning you, there are some graphic photos on here, so be warned. So put down the popcorn and don't eat anything. All right, birth is actually called parturition. So that's what the doctors call the actual birthing of the baby. It occurs about 280 days from the first day of the last period, which is why we call that the 40-week pregnancy, even though, if you remember, there's only something in you for 38 weeks. Now, there can be plus or minus 14 days, so plus or minus 2 weeks. So anything from 38 to 42 weeks is still considered normal. That's just the day that they estimate that you should be having a baby. So once the time is up and the baby's ready, you will go through labor, which is all the events that occur from the very beginning of, oh, I'm going to have a baby today, to the baby's out, everything's out, and mom is almost back to normal. So that would be labor. All events that expel the infant from the uterus. It begins with the initiation of labor. At this point, throughout your pregnancy, your estrogen levels have been increasing until they finally hit a high point. That high point is what tells your uterus to be receptive to this hormone called oxytocin. This is a happy, feel-good hormone. It has to do with delivery of the baby, breastfeeding, and it just makes you feel good all over. And so once the estrogen levels reach that high point, the uterus, which would ignore oxytocin for all the rest of the time, now is like, oh, come on over, play with me. Also, you have progesterone, which goes up and up and up. Progesterone prevents your uterus from contracting. So near birth, all of a sudden there's a huge decline in the amount of progesterone that your body produces. That allows your uterus to be receptive again to the oxytocin. So it antagonizes, goes opposite the quieting effect that progesterone has. Then the muscles, myometrium, the muscles of the uterus become irritable, and weak. So they start contracting and practicing. And when they start practicing, we call that false labor. And what it is you're a couple days from your delivery date, you're totally fine, then all of a sudden your abdomen just goes rock hard, and that's your uterus practices a contraction, and it lasts a couple seconds, maybe a minute or so, and it goes away. But it doesn't hurt. It's just weird because your whole thing just goes and crunches down. So we call those things Braxton-Hicks contractions, named after Mr. Braxton and Mr. Hicks. And a lot of time, first-time moms will go to the doctor thinking, oh my gosh, I'm in labor. And they get there and they go, yeah, no. And so that's why they call it false labor, because it has sent many, many people to the ER a little early. So this is what it looks like with contractions pushing down on baby from all around. Okay, oxytocin. This is the most important hormone dealing with babies. It's produced by the fetus at first, and it causes the uterus to release something called a prostaglandin. A prostaglandin is a hormone that only affects surrounding nearby tissues. It doesn't travel the body like other hormones does. So because it's released by the baby, if the baby's here, anything nearby, well, that's uterus. So that causes the uterus to contract. The contractions become more frequent and vigorous, and so then eventually mom's hypothalamus, a little thing back up here in your brain, says, oh, hey, baby's releasing some oxytocin, I probably should too. And when mom gets in on it, and both baby and mom are giving it, now you're in real labor. And so what happens is that the contractions tell the baby to release more oxytocin. More oxytocin causes more contractions. So what did we call that? A positive feedback loop. So more contractions increase the rate of oxytocin, which causes more contractions, and so on and so forth until baby's out. Once baby is out, then it's just the hypothalamus, because the baby's not there to release any. So the hypothalamus still releases some until the uterus is completely contracted back down to normal size. And there's something called fetal fibronectin. What it is your uterus, actually, I lied. inside the sac with the baby. It's like a glue that kind of holds everything in place. So this fibronectin for your whole entire pregnancy has been like super glue, holding the baby, the sac, and the placenta to mom's uterus. But right around this time when labor is starting, it turns into a lubricant. It turns into a slippery material, which makes it so much easier to expel the uterus and the baby outside. So here's the example of the feedback loop. So the brain, let's see, where's the baby? Let's start with the baby. So the head of the baby pushes against the cervix, so this right here. So you feel pressure down in here. That sends an impulse up the spinal cord to the brain. The brain then releases oxytocin, so oxytocin comes down. That goes to the bloodstream, which goes to the uterus, which stimulates another contraction. Another contraction pushes on the cervix, and so on and so forth. Here's the fibronectin, these little guys right here. So here's a baby bit, here's a mommy bit, and here's a sticky glue that holds it all together until it turns into a lubricant. Because if you didn't, well, nothing would come out, and that would be painful. Okay, labor is divided into 3 stages, stage 1, 2, and 3. Stage 1 can last anywhere from 6 to 12 hours on average. Doesn't mean there can't be less or more. Some people, 2-3 days. By that time, they're like, I give up, just shoot me and take the baby out of me. So it begins at the very first contraction when you're 0 centimeters dilated, and it ends at 10 centimeters when you're about as open as a bagel. So I love this because it shows you common items. So when a doctor looks inside and says you're 1 centimeter dilated, that means your cervix has a hole in it the size of a Cheerio. And then when he says, oh, you're 3 centimeters dilated, well, you could shove a banana inside your cervix. At 4, a Ritz cracker. At 7, you could shove a whole can of soda inside your cervix. And then when you get to 10 centimeters, I can stick a whole bagel up inside there. Not that I would, but you could. So the contractions begin, and they start at the upper uterus, and they work their way down to the vagina, and then kind of works, so it does a little circle working its way. Usually contractions are about 10 to 15 minutes apart, lasting about 10 to 30 seconds. And at this time, they're not quite painful yet. You're just like, oh, hey, that's different. But then after a little while, ooh, do they start to hurt. And as the baby starts moving down on the cervix, it hurts more. Your cervix will soften and thin out, and it dilates more. Your water may or may not break at this time. It completely is arbitrary. And then the baby engages itself. It presents its head into the pelvis. They call this the station. And so if you watch any shows with babies, you know, they'll stick their fingers up inside and say, you're 3 centimeters and +2, or something like that. They'll say, or -1, or 0 station, or +3 station. What that is at 0, you have hit this marker on your bone. And so if you're anything above that, you're negative. So -3, the baby's head would still be up here, and you got a ways to go. But if you're +3, that means the baby's head is down here at the pubic symphysis, and you're ready to go. So once you're about ready to have a baby, man, those numbers are everything. Because you're like, how effaced am I? How dilated am I? What's my station? And it's like the bigger the numbers, you're like, yeah, let's get this thing out of me. All right, stage 2, the expulsion. Oh, what is that? So this can take anywhere from 20 minutes to 2 hours. Again, averages can be less or more. So this lasts from when you're 10 centimeters dilated all the way till the baby coming out. Contractions occur every 2 to 3 minutes, lasting about a minute. So that means if here's 0, 1, 2, 3 minutes, and they're lasting 1 minute, that means you only get 1 or 2 minute break before the next one shows up. And so it's 1, and then eventually they just kind of all blend into each other and become one giant contraction. And so once this happens, the baby's moving down. The baby's on their way out. And so the doctors look for something called crowning. And that's this loveliness going on in this one right here. Once you see the head poking out, you know you're pretty darn close. Now sometimes the head can rip the lining of the vulva, which is very painful. And so to prevent that from happening, what they might do is an episiotomy, which is a cut, either make down toward the booty hole or kind of off at an angle. And what that does just gives more room for the baby to come out, makes it a little bit easier on mom too. And then when they're done, sew it up, don't pull the string, and you're good to go, kind of. So once the head is delivered, the nose and the mouth will be suctioned of mucus, because you don't want your baby to take their first breath and suck all that mucus and amniotic fluid and stuff into their lungs, because they can get respiratory distress and failure, and they have to spend lots of time in the NICU. Now, most babies should come out Vertex presentation, which is head first. You want head to come out first. Some of them come out Breech. Most of the time with sonograms, they know this, and they'll just take them C-sections, because this is very dangerous for a baby to come out feet or butt first. But sometimes you'll have what's called Dystocia, and that is a difficult birth caused by prolonged labor. And what happens is you're pushing, and the baby's shoulder happens to get stuck. So like right here, the baby's coming out, but your pubic bone right there gets stuck on the shoulder, and that can actually cause damage to the baby's spinal nerves that are reaching out and go to the arm, and so now you have a baby with a limp arm. Here's different versions of the breech position. So this one would be butt first. This one you might get a foot out, get it out foot first. That's just funny. And then here is a C-section, but just showing the baby still present in the amniotic sac. All right, stage 3, baby's out, you think you're done. Nope, you still got to push out a placenta. So this is usually within 30 minutes after birth, usually 5 or 10. And so what happens is after the baby comes out, the placenta will start to detach on its own. You don't have to rip and pull. It comes off all by itself, and then you push a few more times. Out comes this big nasty blob, and then the doctors check it out and make sure everything's still there. They didn't leave anything behind, or else that can cause maternal hemorrhaging and bad things. So tell me, what are the 3 stages of labor? What's an episiotomy and what does it do? What's the scientific name for having a baby? What protein helps bind the baby to mom up until delivery? And what is the major hormone that helps to initiate labor and is present all along? All right, hope I didn't gross you out too bad. See you later. Bye.